The train station was shrouded in an eerie stillness, a silence so thick it almost felt unnatural. The usual bustle and noise were nowhere to be found. Instead, an unsettling calm pervaded the air. Fluorescent lights flickered above, casting a pale, ghostly glow that barely penetrated the heavy shadows clinging to the corners of the deserted platform. I stood alone, clutching my worn duffel bag tightly, my breath coming out in shallow, ragged clouds that dissolved into the cold night air. For months, my life had been swallowed whole by work, long, grueling shifts that stretched late into the night, each day bleeding into the next with relentless exhaustion. It was the kind of tired that burrows deep into your bones, making every movement feel like a struggle, every breath heavier than the last. But now, after finally carving out a few precious days off, my mind was consumed by the thought of going home, a place that once felt like a sanctuary. I missed my parents. I missed the warmth of their presence, the familiar comfort of the house where I had grown up. It was more than just nostalgia. It was a craving to reconnect with the part of me that had been left behind in the rush and grind of city life. Every month, like clockwork, I took the same train that linked this cold, grey city with the small town where I had roots. That journey was sacred to me, a time to breathe, to pause, to reset. As the train approached, the soft hum of its engine and the rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the tracks were oddly soothing. Watching the countryside slip by through grimy windows always gave me a strange sense of peace, the world outside moving slower than my frantic life inside. But tonight, something felt off. When I tried to book my usual seat, the system told me it was full. Panic knotted in my stomach. I frantically searched for alternatives. Finally, I booked a seat on a different train, one I'd never heard of, at a departure time that made no sense. Still, I didn't care. I just wanted to get home. The streets leading to the station were quieter than I remembered, the usual city noise scar horns, chatter, distant music replaced by an unsettling silence. It was as if the city itself had been swallowed by the night. I quickened my pace, the cold air biting through my jacket, each step echoing unnervingly in the deserted streets. When I reached the platform, the sight stopped me cold. Only a handful of people were scattered in the shadows, their faces obscured beneath hats and hooded jackets. Their presence felt strange, as if they were waiting for something I couldn't see. The station was a ghost of its former self, aged and forgotten, the walls stained and cracked, the benches empty. Eventually, the train arrived, dragging a mournful whistle behind it. It was an ancient thing, with faded paint peeling from its rusted frame and grimy windows that refused to let in the light. The carriages were dimly lit by flickering bulbs, casting eerie shadows that danced like restless spirits. I stepped onto the train, my footsteps loud in the empty hallway. The air was stale and thick, carrying the faint scent of dust and decay. The walls seemed to close in, the flickering lights twisting my shadow into strange, distorted shapes that flickered and vanished with every blink. Each compartment I passed was vacant. Their doors hung ajar, swinging gently with the rhythm of the train's movement. The upholstery was worn and faded, the windows so dirty they barely revealed the blackness outside. A cold draft snaked through the corridor, sending chills racing up my spine. Despite the emptiness, the silence was oppressive, a suffocating quiet that made my skin crawl. The steady clatter of the wheels on the tracks should have been comforting, but it felt hollow, like the heartbeat of something long dead. Suddenly, from somewhere deep in the train, I heard a distant whistle, a haunting, mournful sound that pierced the stillness and wrapped around my chest like icy fingers. My heart hammered as the train plunged into a tunnel, swallowing all light. Inside, the dim lights flickered more violently, casting monstrous shadows on the walls. A sudden cold swept through the carriage, sharper and colder than any autumn breeze. My breath fogged in the air before me as I searched for the source. That's when I saw her. At the far end of the compartment, a woman stood motionless. Her form was barely visible. In the weak light, she wore a tattered dress, old-fashioned and stained, her hair hanging in tangled mats around a face so pale It seemed almost translucent, her eyes hollow and dark, locked onto mine with a gaze that burned through the gloom. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stand frozen in place. She moved slowly toward me, each step deliberate and soundless on the thick carpet. Her skin was ghostly white, the dark shadows under her eyes making her seem like a corpse risen from the grave. Fear gripped me like a vice. I fought to steady my racing heart, to force my legs into motion. When she was just a few feet away, I stumbled, throwing open the compartment door and spilling into the corridor, but it was no refuge. The hallway stretched endlessly, each carriage identical and empty, the same flickering lights and swinging doors repeating into infinity. Desperation clawed at me as I sprinted down the corridor, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The voices whispered, then faint, distant calls of my name, carried on the wind that seemed to seep through the metal walls themselves. I reached the last carriage and stopped, gasping. This one was different. Its walls were lined with old photographs, yellowed and torn, alongside faded newspaper clippings pinned like relics from another era. My heart pounded as the truth slammed into me. This was no ordinary train. It was a ghost, a cursed vessel trapped on a never-ending journey through the darkness. And now, I was part of its crew, doomed to ride forever. Then I felt it, a cold hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I spun around. The woman was there again, sorrow filling her empty eyes. "Welcome to the night train," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." The train's whistle echoed through the darkness, a mournful cry that seemed to stretch into eternity. Panic surged through me. I ripped my arm free and bolted down the corridor, not daring to look back. Without hesitation, I flung open a side door and leapt from the train. The fall was brutal. I tumbled and rolled across the rough ground, pain flashing through my body, but adrenaline pushed me up. I ran fast, blind, desperate. The night air was sharp and biting against my skin, each ragged breath a struggle as I pushed forward through the thick darkness. Behind me, the ghostly train slowly faded into the distance, its haunting whistle echoing faintly. But the chill it left behind wasn't just cold air, it settled deep in my soul, a shadow that clung to me relentlessly, refusing to let go. At last, I reached my home. I slammed the door shut and pressed my trembling back against it, desperate for safety. But the refuge I had longed for felt hollow and lifeless. Every creak and groan of the floorboards seemed amplified in the silence, twisting familiar sounds into ominous threats lurking just beyond sight. The darkness inside was different, now heavier, oppressive, almost alive. I flicked on the lights, hoping for comfort, but the shadows only deepened, twisting into shapes that shifted and moved as if the very walls breathed and watched me. Sleep was impossible. My mind replayed the train, the woman with her hollow eyes, the endless carriages disappearing into an abyss. The curse of that ghostly train had marked me, and no matter how far I ran or how tightly I tried to hold on to normalcy, I knew the nightmare was far from over. I could never truly escape. I tried to get back to my routines, burying myself in work and forcing my mind to forget the nightmare. Days blurred together as I clung to normalcy, convincing myself that the ghostly train was just a bad memory. But every night, no matter how exhausted I was, I'd hear that eerie whistle echoing through the darkness, sharp and haunting. It called to me, a reminder that I never truly left the train behind. No matter how hard I tried, that sound would pull me back like the curse was still holding me tight. I realized then that the nightmare wasn't over, and I could never escape the ghostly train's grip. It wasn't just a memory. It was a part of me now, haunting every moment, every shadow, every silent night.